Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ahmed Atere from Mid Networks. I would like to continue from where we have stopped. I'm highly excited to be here today. And sincerely, we're here to plan what belongs to us. Because for me, where I always give much of preference is made in Nigeria content, made in Nigeria products, and always saying that we Nigeria can handle our things ourselves, which was the first lecture we had about the high XP, the second one about having our own domain. But the next question to us is this: on which backbone does all these services run on? That is what I'll be taking us on for the next few minutes, and I believe that we would have a very exciting time. First, we'll talk about the background of backbone network in Nigeria right now. We also talk about where we are currently, where are we meant to be, and lastly, we talk about how do we move forward from here. Very importantly for me is the fact that all of us in this room were stakeholder towards building Nigerian national backbone that is very stakeable. Don't think you are not, because you're not an engineer, or because you are not in the industry, or because you are just part of this to come and sell something. No, we are all a big stakeholder, and I'm going to take us through the journey. Today, we'll talk about the history, background, basically. I'll also talk about fiber optics. Then lastly, talk about some of the fiber backbone that actually has been around. I'm sure the word fiber is not new to anyone in this room. If it is new, we're going to be saying some things about it. And building a backbone that is scalable revolves around actually having a very robust network. And having a robust network also talks a lot more about what the need is. 10 or 15 years ago, I'm sure the kind of phones we are holding is not the same we are holding right now. We now have phones that can do a lot more, that require so much bandwidth, and then also require ourselves to be well involved in everything we do. And coming here today, half of us, or maybe just of us, would have probably used Uber. That's a service running on a backbone network. Some of us would have also run on different services. Basically, all we do right now revolves around a service that is meant to be built on a backbone. So the next and the most important thing for every one of us is to be sure that all these networks are being built on a resilient system. Again, this federal government initiative of e-government is really going around and is really moving very, very fast. I'm sure for those of us that deals with the government sector know so much about this. And most importantly, again, almost all our services, most of us that are here today, do register for this conference online, which tells us something. We're moving to that era in which being online is going to be part of all our services. Then, how do we move forward? Looking at the history of some of the services we actually all engage in, I've set up there. Looking at the history, our world used to be this dark. Maybe they call it the dark ages. But something happened. There was a revolution. And the revolution has turned it to something like this. What do we see in here? A connected what? Environment. Connected continent. And the next question is this: how is this continent? How are they connected? I'll give you a very small joke, right? And a fact also that all these continents, they are connected together via a thin strand of glass. And to bring it in a better perspective, I wish I had a very long hair, or maybe the ladies can help us. So what connects the world together is actually a sphere of glass that is thinner, that's about 1/10 of our hair. So if I pull a strand of my mustache, which is very, very small, right, and I divide it into about 7 times, what connects us together is actually about 1/7 of it. That's the fiber optics. Okay? So with this knowledge, we would know that not only are we connected to other continents around the world, we're also connected in Africa with so much of this bandwidth. I know we have heard about Glo1 in Nigeria, Main1, the SAT3 networks. We are all connected with this. But the next question to us is this. We are connected to the world. We are connected across Africa. How well are we connected within Nigeria? Till date, we've had an appreciable level of connectivity within the country. Basically, connection to all the state capitals through one medium or the other. And kudos to the telcos who are very fast in deploying their networks across the country, most of it being wireless. But in recent times, they've also been able to lay an appreciable number of fiber optics around the nation. And you would see, I emphasize more on fiber optics because that is actually the kind of technology or the backbone that the entire country depends on. And how does this work? I was telling us earlier on about the fiber optics itself, right? Looking at the fiber design, the thin strand of hair, which I said was 1/7 of the entire human hair strand, is the core at the center, which we can all see. And that is what puts us all together. So no matter the connectivity between a very short distance, or the one within the continent, or the one within the country, all of them are fused together like this. The core, which is at the center, is where the light actually passes through. Obviously, how the fiber works is the transmission of light through a thin glass fiber, and the core is where it passes. So it all brings this back to perspective, that if we need to achieve this in the country, and we are looking at the best kind of technology to take this all around, which is immune to interference, has large bandwidth, it can actually go a very long distance. I'm sure we all know, for those that come from Abuja or from Kano or from long distance, Nigeria is actually a vast community. So we need something this resilient to actually go around the entire country. The next question is this. The fiber backbone, where is it applied? Where are the applications? Just look around, everywhere around, from telecoms to internet to security, entertainment industry. Anywhere you look around to, this is the way to go. So with this background knowledge, I would also want to look at some basic economic growth around technology in the world. Look at that graph out there. It's telling us about the infusion of fiber optic technology in building backbone network up to our homes. There has been a very high increase from 2014 all the way to 2010, telling us that this is just the way to go. And we've seen a couple of estates now in Nigeria, in Abuja, in Lagos, that actually has had what we call the FTTH, fiber to the home. We have a couple of telcos and service providers who has also built fiber to the curb, fiber to the cabinet, and we have FTTH all around. So this is the era. This is where we are. And why I'm bringing us through all this background knowledge is the fact that we have a long way to go. Each and everybody in this room has something to put in there. And for us to appreciate this more, I would like to give us a quick example of what we are looking at. I recently conducted a research with some team of engineers around the country, and we're able to say, looking at a hypothetical figure of connecting Nigeria together, and that is laying fiber optic backbone to every LGAs in Nigeria. LGA will mean local government, like every county in Nigeria, right? And we come up with this, that we have 6 geopolitical zones. Covering all these distances, we're talking about 36,000 kilometers all across the world, all across Nigeria. To make this more appreciable to us, this is talking about 4,000 kilometers less than moving around the entire world. That is the circumference of the world, right? Is just 4,000 kilometers less if we are laying fiber to all local governments in Nigeria. That tells us the huge work ahead of us. Now, let's do a quick one again. If on the average, you're talking about the cost of deployment of fiber optics or fiber backbone as about 7 million per kilometer, and we have 36,310 to travel across Nigeria. We're talking about a whooping 25 billion capex of doing this across Nigeria. And for our foreign partners here, we're talking about over $700 million investment and infrastructure to be built. Isn't that huge enough? Do we just want to sit there and allow it done without being a stakeholder in this? Then the next question is, how do we build this with this kind of volume? Let's move on. This is basically like a breakdown of what a typical infrastructure is going to be looking like. And you can see a huge part of it goes into construction. We also have some part that goes into the engineering and some part that goes into the staffs that will be participating in this kind of deployment. So if this is well appreciable, how do we all tap in? Or looking at the whole architecture, how do we build a scalable network for Nigeria? Now, we need to understand where we are. Currently, like I've said, we have had some appreciable efforts from some telcos who have rolled out fiber optics across the nation, basically to expand their network, being a very cheap means of backbone infrastructure for them, also to be able to carry large bandwidth for them and all that. And this has made us to have serious fiber presence. And what does that mean? What we have had is an appreciable number of backbone networks in urban areas. An example is Lagos. We have a lot of that. Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, and all the major cities around the country. Because you can't blame them. What they want is a place that gives them a well commercial returns. That they have achieved. Also, we've also have currently, what we have is individual fiber optic deployment across different parts of the nation. I'll give you a typical example. Just crossing very close by Third Mainland Bridge, you would see almost 3 or 4 different lines of fiber optic cable that goes across that same path. Same distance, same direction. Another example is between Lagos and Ibadan. Telco A, Telco B, and Telco C, they are traveling the same 120 kilometers. And let me give you a better perspective of this. So a single strand of fiber optic cable, or a single duct, or a single 24-core cable would carry as much bandwidth for all the telcos that are passing that same route as against each of them going individually on themselves. So let's give an example. If it takes them about, let's say, a 45 million naira to lay fiber route from the beginning of Third Mainland Bridge to the end of it, 45 million naira investment is enough to take traffic for all the telcos we have in Nigeria on the same fiber optic cable put together. But what do we have? We have that same 45 million naira investment being paid by all the telcos individually. What do we have with that? Over 180 million naira. So it tells us that that is not an efficient way to move forward. So in building a scalable network, you want to build a network in which people can actually share. We understand that some other commercial services in which doesn't allow them to put together some of them, but eventually, what we are saying is this: we can achieve a lot more if we put ourselves together. Again, we have voice deployment around. We have several fiber cords. Because I'll give a typical example. We're doing a project somewhere in Cross River State at some point, and while Telco A was building, ironically, it was some issues that happened on site. It was going to affect Telco B's infrastructure. That's because Telco A and Telco B are going the same direction. They have given the right of way on the same side, and because they are going the same way, one way or the other, one telco infrastructure is going to affect the other, because in the process of manual digging, sometimes, which is the most popular in our country, one can mistakenly damage the other one. So sometimes you have several fiber cords around. If construction goes that same direction, I remember some years back when they were doing this Lekki Ekpe Expressway, a lot of us who lived in Lagos would have seen a lot of fiber optic cables being damaged, all on the same direction. So we have this as some of the cases currently. Again, we do not have a regulated mode of deployment. So telco A could do their own the way they like. Telco B will have their own standard, and telco C will have a different standard. Whereas we can all have a uniform bandwidth to move, or bandwidth, or a uniform way of deploying things. So these are some of the current issues we have in the country. Then again, when a new telco or a new service provider needs to come in, there's a very huge barrier because he has to also do the same thing, like the example I gave earlier on of laying cable across the Third Mainland Bridge. If you want to pass that same route, even with his own infrastructure, he has to do the same thing. So these are some of the critical situations we have found ourselves with the way our fiber is currently being built. The next question is this. This is where we are. This is where we need to be. How do we get there? In doing so, we need to build a scalable network. And in building one, we have identified 3 major stakeholders. The government, the telcos and the service providers themselves, and also everyone in this room, which I mean all the citizens around here. Let's now take the issue with everyone, one after the other. Looking at the government, what do they need to do? The first is to reduce the political and commercial risk when it comes to building backbone networks. Now, we're taking this from the point of where we are. What we usually have is all these telcos need to build their backbone themselves. They need to have their network built around the places. But what the government can do, and if you look at the instance of when the telcos actually started rolling out, it was purely based on wireless backbone connectivity. Now they are moving on into fiber backbone connectivity. What the government needs to do is to ensure that whenever they are dealing with any of these telcos or service provider or any engagements being had, they're able to reduce the risk in terms of investment, in terms of assurance and guarantee that even when new providers come in, they're going to have so much interest on the amount they have invested in building this backbone. Secondly, we cannot blame the telcos for not going to underserved areas because their own major formula is about what is my ROI if I go there. So the same way, I don't have high-speed network in my village in Igbo just because they feel you have less citizens over there and they cannot get their money as fast as if they do deploy so much facility on the island. Governments need to come here, in which find a way to subsidize the amount or the capex in trying to go to these underserved areas. And after this, I will tell you a bit about what Nigerian government is also doing about this. But most importantly, if we need to have broadband and internet for everyone, which is the theme of this year's ngNOG conference, it means government needs to do more in ensuring you have subsidies and financial support for telcos who are going to those underserved areas. Because what that means is we can say on every local government, which is based on the question I did earlier on, fiber optics or backbone network will actually be built up to that particular point. The next major one is government should also be able to regulate the deployment practice. I wish I had enough time. I was showing us some horrible deployment pictures that you find around the nation in terms of the way fiber optics is being installed, in terms of the way they are being built, in terms of planning. There are a lot of horrible services going on, even within those that are being built right now. But moving forward, if government focuses on this and build a proper regulated development practice standard in terms of licensing those who install, in terms of checking out what has been installed, because remember, what we are building, it's something that will scale over time. We don't want to do that same project in the next 5 years. We're talking about 25 to 30 or 50 years ahead of time, which so many countries have already done around the world. So it is very important that we actually create a standard in which telco ABC knows that this is the minimum point and this is how we are going to go. I'll give you a typical example just before I move on from there. You know, sometimes when you go along the road, you see some HDPE pipes, which is where they put in some fiber. But I've seen some deployments done by some telcos in which they're actually using PVC pipes to actually lay in their fiber optic cable. And if that is done, what that means is the amount of ducting for that particular tranche of line is not well protected. And in a few years or a few months from now, you're talking about that part of the system being broken down. In that scenario, you cannot build a scalable network around that kind of practice. Again, we also need to ensure that a regulated pricing is being taken care of by the government does that, and also try to remove some major obstacle to investment and enhance competition between all the players in the industry. And government doing all this gives any foreign investor or even gives a local boost to everyone in that industry or to even people in this room to know that we have a very sure and more active way moving forward. These are the government's rules. Moving forward, I'll give us some case scenarios about some of the stuff that has been done by the federal government. Sorry, I need to move on. Sorry, my flicker, please. Control room. So, and I'll give kudos. Control room, please. Okay, good. Okay, thank you. So, moving forward, we give kudos to the Nigerian government. I'm going to get there quickly. So, basically, taking a case study of how this works, like an example I was giving earlier on, right? We have in 2003 in Spain, talking about policies and government, how they can actually play a major role. And there was a policy that any major building that is being built should actually come in with ICT infrastructure or ICT service or passive dot already in place. Same way we can say that any major estate being built right now should be internet ready, such that any of the telco providers who wants to serve them broadband internet or broadband services can easily plug in. I will tell you what currently operates. So like I said, I work for Big Networks Nigeria Limited. We actually build fiber optic networks for schools, for agencies, for government, and also for estates around. What we have to do right now is, in providing broadband service to every home, we have to also be the ones to go into those homes and actually deploy fiber optic facilities, because when they were being built, none of these homes actually comes with these services, right? But if there's a government policy that as new homes are coming up, there are duct channels, they're actually prepared for the advent of connecting them to the internet services, it's going to be a lot easier to even boost those who want to invest in that case. The second case scenario for there is Ahmadu Bello University. My company actually built the fiber optic network in Ahmadu Bello University, and what we have done, what was achieved moving forward over there was the fact that after the project was about for 3 kilometers of fiber optic cable that connects 3 major campuses together. Afterwards, there was fiber to every floor in the university, and we had to do land points all around. Basically, what we realized is it was a lot of work because it has all been done. But having had a serious engagement with the stakeholders, it was agreed and a policy was made moving forward that any building that is going to be built in that university should come properly built with the ICT infrastructure. That's an example of a policy that can be made to enhance broadband services moving forward, which is the same thing each and every one of us can do over here. We all have our houses, we all have our homes. It's as simple as even in your homes, you can actually have some internet ports in all your rooms. I mean, that's a policy, that's something we can prove moving forward, right? So, again, coming back to what needs to be done in Nigeria and what is ongoing, which is the only one I'm going to share with us right now. Up there we have an example of the Korean government, which through series of phases, trying to move fast on my stuff, they are able to subsidize the deployment of broadband network to all the underserved areas by also investing in government funds through phase 1, phase 2, into those times when backbone is being deployed around the country. And afterwards, you are able to get broadband internet for everyone, because what government has done is able to subsidize it. Now, coming back to the Nigerian government right now, from the pronunciation of the federal government about internet to all underserved areas, also local government in Nigeria, the federal government actually has an initiative in which the telcos, some telcos have been selected, and they are asked to actually deploy fiber backbone around the entire country. And the government is also subsidizing some of the cost of deployment. This is one very great kudos we have to give to the federal government, because this is one of the major pathways in which we can achieve internet for everyone through government and using government policy. Again, moving forward are one major stakeholders. Those are the telcos and also the service providers. What do I mean by this? All the like I give an example of laying cable all around the world, and from diagram I showed us around earlier on about crossing Third Mainland Bridge. Imagine if we don't have to spend 45 million naira each to cross Third Mainland Bridge, and the telcos can come together and save that cost, and with all their differences, they will have a joint collective effort to protect that infrastructure. There will be less capex on them, and for them, even management moving forward is going to be a lot easy. This is, and the cost that should have been used in building those individual networks can actually be taken to be used in serving other underserved areas far in the east, far in the west, and we can achieve internet for everyone. So using a shared infrastructure environment, all this is very much possible. And the telcos and the service providers can actually come together to achieve this by having enough planning and also doing proper deployment with skilled personnel, which is one